In the early 20th century, Germany was not a nation preparing for world domination. It was a country in crisis, broken, humiliated, and desperate for change. Yet within just 2 decades, it would become the center of one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. How did this happen? How did one man rise to power and lead an entire nation down such a destructive path? This is the story of Adolf Hitler and the rise of Nazi Germany. To understand Hitler's rise, we need to go back to the end of World War I in 1918. Germany had just lost the war, and the consequences were devastating. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, placed full blame for the war on Germany. It forced the country to pay massive reparations, give up territories, and drastically reduce its military. For many Germans, this treaty was not just unfair, it was humiliating. The economy collapsed, hyperinflation destroyed savings. At one point, people needed wheelbarrows full of money just to buy bread. Unemployment skyrocketed, and millions of people struggled to survive. In this chaos, democracy began to look weak. Germany became a republic known as the Weimar Republic, but it faced constant political instability. Governments changed rapidly, and extremist groups on both the left and the right began to gain support. This was the environment in which Adolf Hitler emerged. Hitler was born in Austria in 1889 and moved to Germany as a young man. He served as a soldier during World War I and was deeply affected by Germany's defeat. Like many others, he believed that Germany had been betrayed from within. After the war, he joined a small political group called the German Workers' Party. It was here that Hitler discovered his greatest weapon, his ability to speak. He was not just a speaker, he was a powerful orator. His speeches were emotional, intense, and filled with anger. He blamed Germany's problems on the Treaty of Versailles, on political leaders, and on minority groups, especially Jews. These ideas were not new, but Hitler presented them in a way that gave people something they desperately wanted: someone to blame. In 1920, the party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, also known as the Nazi Party. Hitler's popularity grew, but in 1923 he made a bold and risky move. He attempted to overthrow the government in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The attempt failed. Hitler was arrested and sentenced to prison. But this failure turned into an opportunity. While in prison, Hitler wrote a book called Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. In it, he outlined his ideology, including extreme nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the idea that Germany needed more living space to expand. After his release, Hitler changed his strategy. Instead of trying to seize power by force, he would gain it legally. For a few years, it seemed like his movement had stalled, but then everything changed. In 1929, the Great Depression hit the world, and Germany was one of the hardest-hit countries. Millions lost their jobs, businesses collapsed, poverty spread rapidly. Once again, people were desperate, and once again, Hitler offered simple answers to complex problems. He promised to restore Germany's economy, he promised to rebuild the military, he promised to make Germany strong again. Most importantly, he promised hope. By the early 1930s, the Nazi Party had become one of the largest political parties in Germany. In 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor, but this was only the beginning. Shortly after taking power, a mysterious fire broke out in the Reichstag, the German parliament building. Hitler used this event to claim that the country was under threat from communists. Using fear as a tool, he convinced the government to grant him emergency powers. These powers allowed him to bypass democratic institutions. Within months, Germany was no longer a democracy. Political opponents were arrested. Freedom of speech was eliminated. Independent media was shut down. Hitler had transformed Germany into a dictatorship. But he didn't stop there. He began rebuilding the military in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. He reoccupied territories that Germany had lost after World War I. At first, other countries did little to stop him. In 1938, Hitler annexed Austria. Soon after, he demanded control of parts of Czechoslovakia. European leaders, hoping to avoid another war, chose a policy of appeasement. They believed that giving Hitler what he wanted would maintain peace. They were wrong. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This marked the beginning of World War II. Within a short time, Germany used a new form of warfare known as blitzkrieg, or lightning war, to rapidly conquer much of Europe. Countries fell quickly. Fear spread across the continent. But behind the military expansion was a much darker reality. Hitler's regime carried out systematic persecution and mass murder, targeting Jews and other minority groups in what became known as the Holocaust. Millions of innocent people lost their lives. What began as a political movement had turned into one of the greatest tragedies in human history. So how did this happen? The rise of Hitler was not the result of a single event. It was the result of economic collapse, political instability, and the power of propaganda. It was also a reminder of how fear and anger can be used to manipulate entire societies. Hitler did not take power overnight. He rose step by step, using the system, exploiting its weaknesses, and turning crises into opportunities. And by the time many realized the danger, it was already too late. History is not just about the past, it is also a warning. The story of Nazi Germany shows us how fragile democracy can be and how important it is to protect it. Because sometimes the most dangerous changes don't happen suddenly, they happen slowly, until one day everything is different.